The champagne tasted like ash in Marcus, Wellington's mouth as he watched. His latest date pull out her phone again to photograph the Michelin-starred meal she'd barely touched. She was too busy calculating, he knew. Calculating the worth of his watch, his car, his potential net worth. It was always the same dance, the same hollow script, and he was so tired of performing. That's when Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Starting tomorrow, he would become someone else entirely. Marcus Wellington III wasn't just wealthy. He was obscenely, generationally rich. At 34, he'd inherited a tech empire worth billions and had tripled it through his own innovations. But wealth, he'd discovered, was a peculiar kind of prison. Every person who entered his life came with an agenda, an angle, a carefully rehearsed performance designed to extract something from him, especially the women his mother kept setting him up with, socialites, and actresses and entrepreneurs who saw dollar signs where a heart should beat. So Marcus crafted an alter ego. He bought a modest Honda Civic, rented a small apartment in a middle-class neighborhood, and created a new identity, Mark Wilson, struggling freelance graphic designer. He kept his real penthouse and his fleet of cars, of course, but for these blind dates his mother insisted on arranging. He would arrive as Mark, a man of modest means, big dreams and questionable job security. The first few dates under his new identity were revelatory. Women who would have hung on his every word as Marcus. Wellington suddenly found urgent reasons to leave dinner early. One actually answered a fake emergency call from her sick grandmother, 15 minutes into appetizers. Another spent the entire evening checking her phone, barely concealing her disappointment. Marcus took notes. He was learning finally what shallow waters he'd been swimming in. Then came date number 7. Elena Martinez wasn't what he expected. For one thing, she arrived 10 minutes late, flustered and apologetic, with what appeared to be glitter glue on her sleeve.
"I'm so sorry," she said,
sliding into the booth at the modest diner he'd chosen. "My daughter's school project ran late." "And then the babysitter." She stopped herself, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "I'm sorry. You don't need my life story in the first 30 seconds. But Marcus found himself wanting exactly that. Elena was 29, a single mother to 6-year-old Sophie, and worked as a nurse at County General Hospital. She'd agreed to this blind date only because her sister had begged her to get back out there after her divorce 2 years ago. She was nervous, Marcus could tell, but not in the calculating way he'd become accustomed to. She was nervous the way people are when they're genuinely hoping for human connection. "So," she said, glancing at the menu, "my sister mentioned you're a graphic designer? That must be interesting work." Marcus launched into his rehearsed background, watching for the telltale signs of disappointment or disinterest. They never came. Instead, Elena asked thoughtful questions about his supposed freelance projects, shared a funny story about terrible hospital signage, and split the check without a second thought. When her phone buzzed and she apologized, explaining she'd asked her sister to text if Sophie needed anything, Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. She wasn't performing. She was just being herself, a busy, devoted mother trying to balance impossible demands and still show up fully present for a stranger she'd just met. "I'd like to see you again," Marcus heard himself say at the end of the evening. "If you're interested." Elena's smile was sunrise bright. "I'd like that too." Their second date was at a playground. Sophie had a soccer game, and Elena apologetically explained that she couldn't miss it. Marcus showed up anyway, sitting on the bleachers beside her, watching the 6-year-olds chase a ball in chaotic patterns across the field. Sophie scored a goal and Elena jumped up, cheering so loudly that other parents laughed. Marcus found himself grinning. Afterward, they got ice cream, and Sophie, shy at first, gradually warmed to him, asking if he liked dinosaurs. He did, or did now, and whether he thought Triceratops could beat a T-Rex in a fight. A surprisingly complex question, it turned out. The third date, Marcus invited them to a free concert in the park. He arrived with a worn picnic blanket and homemade sandwiches, playing his part. But somewhere during the evening, as Sophie fell asleep against his shoulder and Elena's hand found his, Marcus forgot he was playing at all. This felt real in a way nothing had in years. Weeks passed. Marcus met Elena after her long hospital shifts, bringing coffee and sympathy. She introduced him to her small circle of friends, other nurses, Other single parents, people who worked hard and loved harder. He helped Sophie with her homework. He fixed Elena's car when it broke down, refusing payment. And she repaid him with a homemade dinner. That was better than anything his private chef had ever made. He was falling in love. Terrifyingly, completely, wonderfully in love. But the lie sat between them like a ticking bomb. Marcus told himself he'd reveal the truth soon. Next week? Next month? When the moment was right. But the moment never seemed right, and his deception grew heavier with each passing day. He opened a secret bank account in Mark Wilson's name, paid for things carefully, maintained his modest apartment. He lived a double life, and it was exhausting. Then Sophie got sick. Elena called him at 3 in the morning, her voice raw with fear. Sophie had been admitted to the hospital with a severe infection. The doctors were running tests, pumping her with antibiotics, but there were complications. Elena's insurance was good, but not great, and the specialists they needed weren't covered. She wasn't asking for money, she would never, but Marcus could hear the terror underneath her brave facade. "I'll be right there," he said. Marcus sat with Elena in the pediatric ICU, holding her hand as Sophie slept, small and pale against the white sheets. The doctors came and went, discussing treatment options, experimental protocols. Specialists at other hospitals. Each conversation ended with a number, a cost, a boundary that Elena's insurance wouldn't cross. She never complained. She just nodded, squared her shoulders, and asked what they could do within her means. Marcus watched the woman he loved try to price out her daughter's life and felt something break inside him. He made calls from the hospital bathroom. As Marcus Wellington, he could move mountains. Within hours, the hospital administrator was in Elena's room, explaining that an anonymous donor had agreed to cover all costs. The best pediatric infectious disease specialist in the country was flying in from Boston. Everything Sophie needed would be provided. Elena wept with relief and confusion. "I don't understand," she kept saying. "Why would someone do this?" Marcus held her, his own eyes burning, and said nothing. Sophie recovered slowly but surely. The specialist's treatment worked. And within a week, she was sitting up in bed, demanding her stuffed dinosaur and asking when she could go home. Elena was transformed. The fear lifted from her shoulders, her smile returning. She kept trying to find out who the donor was, wanting to thank them but hit dead ends everywhere. It was Marcus's assistant who finally told him the truth. Someone had leaked the story to a local news station. Mysterious billionaire saves local child was running tomorrow night. They'd connected Marcus Wellington to County General, to Sophie Martinez, to everything. He had hours maybe before Elena found out. Marcus drove to her apartment that evening, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. Not the Honda Civic this time. He'd stopped at his penthouse first, driven his Tesla, worn the clothes that fit his real life. He was done hiding. Elena opened the door, her expression melting from surprise to confusion. "Mark, what? Whose car is that? Why are you dressed?" "My name isn't Mark Wilson," he said. "It's Marcus Wellington. I'm the anonymous donor. I'm the person who paid for Sophie's treatment, and I'm the person who's been lying to you since the day we met." The color drained from Elena's face. Marcus told her everything, the failed dates, the deception, his reasons and his rationalizations, and how none of it mattered because he'd fallen. In love with her, really love, and he didn't know how to climb out of the hole he'd dug. He talked until his throat was raw, and Elena stood in her doorway, silent, tears streaming down her face. "Get out," she finally whispered. "Elena, you lied to me. For months, you watched me struggle, watched me panic about money, about Sophie's care, and you lied. You played games with my life." Her voice broke. "I trusted you. I know I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't give me back the person I thought you were." She wiped her eyes. "Thank you for saving my daughter's life. But we're done. Please go." The door closed in his face. Marcus spent the next week in a fog. He went through the motions at work, signed documents, attended meetings. His mother called, delighted by the positive press from his charitable act, talking about photo opportunities and galas. He let it all wash over him, numb. Then a letter arrived at his office. Handwritten, Elena's familiar script. "Dear Marcus," it began. "I've had time to think, and Sophie asked me a question I couldn't answer. She asked why Mr. Mark, you, would save her life if you didn't love us. She said that people don't do things like that unless they really, really care. She's 6, and she understood something I was too hurt to see. You lied about who you were, but you didn't lie about how you showed up. You didn't lie when you sat through soccer games and helped with homework and brought me coffee during double shifts. You didn't lie when you held my hand in that hospital room. The person I fell in love with, that person was real, Marcus. Even if the name wasn't. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if we can come back from this. But Sophie wants to see you, and maybe I do too. If you're willing to be honest this time. Actually honest. No more games, no more tests. Just you. Marcus read the letter 3 times, then called his assistant. Cancel everything tomorrow, he said. Actually, cancel everything indefinitely. I need to remember what matters. He showed up at Elena's apartment the next evening. No expensive car this time, just him standing on her doorstep, holding a dinosaur book for Sophie and flowers for Elena and his heart in his hands. She opened the door, and for a long moment they just looked at each other. Hi, Marcus said. I'm Marcus Wellington. I'm a workaholic billionaire who's terrified of being used. And I've handled that fear in the worst possible ways. I'm deeply flawed, I've made terrible choices, and I don't deserve another chance. But I love you. I love Sophie. And if you'll let me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life proving that the person you fell in love with wasn't a disguise. It was me finally being brave, enough to be real. Sophie appeared behind her mother, eyes lighting up. Mr. Mark? Did you bring the dinosaur book? Elena's lips twitched. She's been calling you Mr. Marcus Mark for days. I'll answer to anything, Marcus said quietly, looking at Elena. As long as I get to answer. Elena sighed, but she was almost smiling. Come inside. We need to talk. Really talk. Ground rules, honesty, everything. Anything, Marcus promised. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Trust, once broken, had to be rebuilt piece by careful piece. Elena made Marcus work for it. Months of brutal honesty, of therapy sessions, of him learning that love wasn't about grand gestures but showing up consistently, truthfully, wholly. There were arguments and setbacks and moments when Elena almost walked away for good. But Marcus kept showing up. The real Marcus this time. Flawed, honest, learning. A year later, at Sophie's 7th birthday party, surrounded by Elena's friends and the community that had become his, Marcus watched Elena laugh at something. Sophie's teacher said, and felt gratitude wash over him. He'd spent years surrounded by wealth and emptiness, and this loud, chaotic, ordinary, extraordinary moment was worth more than every dollar in his accounts. Elena caught his eye across the room and smiled. A real smile, full of hard-won trust and cautious hope and maybe, just maybe, forever. Later she would say it was that smile that saved them both.